Good night. My name is Thea Starr, aka Empress T of Empress Royale Publishing, where everything tells a story. And tonight we have with us the Fordes. So I'm going to give them a few minutes to introduce themselves officially to you. We are on our third episode of the After the Ring series. So let's welcome them.
Hi, good night, guys. My name is Shaniqua Forde.
Mine is Gershon Forde, and it's good to be here.
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, so let's jump right in, okay? Did you know that your spouse was the one on the first day of meeting?
No.
No.
I would say no.
No, I don't think so either. No.
So it wasn't one of those love at first sight moments?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. What do you think it means to have a Christ-centered marriage?
Go ahead.
I think a Christ-centered marriage really is more about what role does Christ play in the marriage. And I mean, not to sound cliche, but I mean, you can see you have a Christ-centered marriage because you pray and stuff like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a Christ-centered marriage. So when I think of a Christ-centered marriage, I think of a marriage where our actions and everything that we do reflects the love and the mercy and the grace and the character of Christ in all that we do, not just whether we pray or do devotions together and stuff like that. But I think when I think of Christ-centered marriage, I think of a marriage where the character of individuals tries its best daily to emulate and reflect the character of Christ in everything that we do in our interactions.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a marriage that is led by God. So everything he said.
Sorry, you would have heard this before. Have you had experience where you actually got to live that out? Before we hear a lot of things and we don't know until we're in the situation. So have you had the opportunity to truly understand what that means, a Christ-centered marriage?
Before getting together with him?
No, during. Like now it's like, has it become even more real?
I guess, yeah. Before, I think for me, in terms of getting married and I was single before, obviously, and having to be a person who is led by God, loves God, all of that, it was easier than now having to be in a relationship in terms of balancing everything and having us coming together and make sure that God is as you said, the focal point of our relationship. So I guess it became real after mostly so after we said I do than before, I guess, because now you have everything, you're living together, you're doing everything together, and you have to make sure that you don't just say that you have a Christ-centered marriage, but that he is really the focal point of the marriage.
So how you said it was easier? How was it easier?
Before, because we were not living together and there were not a lot of things to do. Do you understand? So when we were apart, it was like he lived somewhere else and I lived somewhere else. So the things that we would have to do daily was not there. So then in terms of us having to make sure that we balance things together, to make sure that we always try to quote unquote put God first and make sure that he's the focal point of our relationship, then it was harder to adjust in marriage.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. Growing up, did you see lifelong commitment modeled in your family? How has your experience affected your view of this concept? So did you have examples, and how has your experience affected your view on marriage?
I never had good examples, to be honest. I've never, the first, well, my grandmother was married, but when I was born, she was not. So I just saw relationships with my mother or with my grandmother. My grandparents from my father's side were married. However, other than that, I never saw, in my opinion, stable relationships
Yeah.
or a relationship that I would say when I was younger, well, I want that. And I believe that it had a negative um, point of view in terms of me seeing it when I was growing up. So it had an effect on me as an adult. Obviously, whatever happens to us as children, we can adopt that, and then it can affect us later on. And for me, it was the fact that I never saw a good relationship. Whenever I got into relationships, I guess I would start to emulate what I saw with my mother or with my grandmother or whatever, where she was more like aggressive and stuff like that. How she was, I would get on with that. So for me, I think it affected me in a negative way and not a positive. So I didn't see, in my opinion, I didn't see like that love. Even with my grandparents from my father's side, they were married, yes, but I never saw like anything between them that would say like I want that. It was just like she cooked, she cleaned, she did everything. He came home, blah blah blah. They spoke like very seldom, and that was it.
Wow. And Gershon?
Pretty much, what she said. I didn't really grow up with in my mind, not necessarily the best definition of a stable marriage either. Because well, my parents were married for 35 years. For my dad died last year. And even though they were married for so long, um, I didn't ever see anything in their marriage that I ever said, okay, when I get married, I want this, I wanna do that, ever. So, uh, did it impact me? Yeah, it definitely did. But I guess because of how I am by nature, if I see something that I don't like, I try to figure out how to get what I do like. The problem is you don't actually know what you want looks like. You don't have something to look at to say, okay, well, I don't want to do this, I want to do this, but you don't know what this looks like or how to accomplish the this that you want to do. So it definitely had a tremendous impact on me. And then of course as we got married, I definitely then had to start to well, in the process of getting married and stuff, preparing to marry and stuff, I had to really go through the process that I'm starting to learn. And every day is a continual learning. It's really a continual learning experience of trying to be better based now on what God says and based on what I know for sure I don't want. And just trying my best to walk it the other way.
So since you both said that you didn't really have a great example, in case someone may ask, they could be in a similar situation. How did you prepare for something that you didn't know? Aside from obviously God, did you have any like counselors, anybody to like encourage you, it maybe in your churches, wherever you work, to show you like what to look forward to?
Yeah, for me, I did a lot of reading even before I was in a relationship. And but even though the reading was good, in my opinion, what really helped was counseling, because we did premarital counseling and we got in depth in terms of childhood back up. And so by going through that, as he said, it's still a learning experience, and it isn't that we got everything down pat and we're still going through that process. But however, through counseling, we were able to see what we want, what we can take from the past and bring here, and what we can left off and not bring here, and then create a better future for us and for our children from here on out, and emulate what, and also obviously the Bible, and emulate what Christ says a husband and wife is supposed to, a marriage is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
For you too, Gershon, you had
Um, yeah, I I had really went through a point where I really had to start to get where I had to learn myself. And I really had to get into understanding who Gershon was. And so by the time we got into counseling, counseling was absolutely tremendous for me as well, because it really forced, and I think the way our counselor approached marriage counseling was unique, because a lot of times people approach marriage counseling and premarital counseling from the space of, okay, y'all are going to get married, so this is what you need to do, to
Yeah.
be married, and do this and do that. But he approached it from the space of, and it's really been the perspective that I adopt now, when the Bible says that two shall become one. For two to become one, each of you has to be an individual first. 1 plus 1 is what makes two. If you, in the grand scheme, in the understanding of two becoming one. So first of all, before we can even think about the two of us becoming one, and acting and thinking and all those things, it first starts in the individual. You must be you need to be a whole person. And so for me, our counselor really did a tremendous job of really dragging us through, who is Gershon? Who is Shaniqua? Why does Shaniqua do this? Why does Gershon do that? If you at least understand yourself, then you're better able to understand when you come into a relationship, now what you're bringing into the relationship, what you accept, what you will not accept, what your insecurities are, all of those things. Then once you get to know yourself better, it will help you in your marriage. So for us, and for me for sure, counseling was critical. I don't think counseling really prepared us in many ways for a lot of what we had to deal with in marriage, in ways that we did not have understood, have we been focusing on who likes to eat macaroni pie from whose favorite color is blue. Really getting in depth individual, getting to know yourself as a person, definitely helps.
Right. So it's important that you get to know yourself before marriage. It's not just about the wedding day fanfare and wanting to party and dance with your family and friends. It's so important because after the ring, life happened, reality hits. Wow.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Who said I love you first? How did the other person react?
He did.
Okay.
How did I react?
Tell me.
I just told him that I was not going to say it until I knew that I meant it, and I didn't want to just say it because he said it.
She rejected it. That's what she's trying to say.
Wow. She rejected.
Shut it down.
I didn't reject it. I didn't reject it. I just told him. I just asked him how he knew because it was so soon, and then I just told him that I was not going to tell him that. So I hope that he was not expecting me to tell him because I wanted to stay in my own time when I knew that I was ready and not just say it because I want to please him or I don't want him to feel bad because he said it to me and I didn't say it.
It's true. That's exactly what she said.
And in that moment, how did you feel when she?
You know, to be honest, I don't. But I guess initially, you go to say that you're kind of like, well, you expect for her to say that. But to be honest, when she explained why she said it, I respected that, and I was actually grateful that she did. Because a lot of times we get caught in he says, she says. So I say I love you, you say you love me too, but really and truly, we're not there. And I told her that. I told her, listen, I've said it because this is how I feel. You don't have to feel the same way, and I will not feel. I told her that before I even said it, which is why she knew what I was going to say. But I told her I'm saying something because of how I feel, whether or not it's not dependent on how you feel as well. I'm saying it because that's how I feel. And if you don't feel the same way, then you don't have to say it back. But of course, I probably was hoping that she might have said it back. But then she didn't,
Yeah.
and I couldn't be vexed because I had already made it clear that I want her to be honest. And I was glad that she was honest. And when she finally did say out of the blue, it was really cute, and I was happy. So
That's good. So, ladies, if you're not ready to say that, as Shaniqua pointed out, if that's not how you're feeling, don't feel obligated to just say it. Like sometimes, especially if they say it over the phone, it's like, I love you too. Then it just becomes like a cliche and it's not, it doesn't come from a truthful place. So
right.
as pointed out for us ladies, make sure that you're ready to say and you mean it because the word I love you have such a generic and cliche connotation, and that's not a good thing because love is a very powerful action word. It's not just a word, it's an action. So it's so important, as Shaniqua would have pointed out, that you were actually ready to reciprocate with when your significant other says it. Wow. What does romance look like in your marriage?
Where are you talking me?
Talk to the people.
What does I think that we're actually kind of worried about on it. What does romance look like for us? Don't say that. Um, I guess for me is little things like if we're in bed at night and he kisses my forehead and he says, "Well, I love you," you know, stuff like that for me is romantic. I don't honestly, I don't know if like how people will say like, oh, like this surprise romantic dinner and stuff like that is for, I guess it's romantic for them and it is cute and romantic, but for me, I guess it's the little things, just those little things that are not for me. It's not so big, but and it's like oh for somebody else, but for me, I guess I hold them there and they're romantic for me. So stuff like that for me is romantic. I don't know, like for you.
No, she asked what was romance for us. I was allowing you to speak on the behalf of us. I really don't I wouldn't add much to that. I think what I've really learned is that as she said, it's really about knowing your partner. So I know for her that I don't have to take her in a helicopter and fly over Barbados and draw two hearts on the sand. Not that she wouldn't like, well, actually she wouldn't do that. She would not jump in a helicopter in the first place. So that was what happened. But that's just in and of itself the point that I'm making, that romance then becomes really for every couple is individualistic. It's about what makes both of you happy. So she laughed when I said, when you asked the question, I said, say no, watching Criminal Minds for hours. That for a lot of you might not be, but for us, that's it. Like we will literally come home and just sit down and watch Law and Order or Criminal Minds or movie or something, and for us, that's it. That's that's perfect. It doesn't have to be, go to the cinema or any of those things. Like that's just what works for us. For somebody else, it might not. Okay, but for us, it's really very simple because by nature, I think we're really simple. By nature, we really don't like a lot of attention and a lot of anything anyhow. So naturally, I guess the things that are simple and the things that are dear to us are what matters the most to us.
Right.
So Law
Or
and Order,
right, I guess.
Law and Order can be romantic. Wow.
I tell you, quite.
Very interesting. Wow. So romance is subjective, obviously, to each couple, and you're showing that just spending time with one another is romantic. That's a big thing. Okay.
Which, I think, if I could pop in, I think it adds to the context of that conversation that we have about love languages and stuff like that. I think comes into play then with understanding romance, because for Shan, her love language is quality time, and
Yeah.
for her, quality time literally just means once I'm around, she's good. Like that's it. If I'm home, once I'm home, she's good. She don't need me to do anything. Just be home, she'll be fine. So that matters. That brings in that's a part of the conversation on romance, understanding each other's love language and what that means for each. For somebody else, if it maybe were I don't know something else, receiving gifts or something, then you might have to go out and spend or take or do other things. But hers is quality time. Mine is word of affirmation. We can do both those things home comfortably and be very good and never need to go and do anything else. Not that we don't or not that we can't, but hey, it's about knowing your partner, understanding your partner, and then living by that person. You gotta love the person they want to be loved, but in the way they want to be loved. You gotta romance them in a way that they will feel romance. You can't romance them in your mind in the way that you want, because that may never do anything for them. So it's about loving a person as well in the way that they want to be loved. If you love them enough, then you will understand the selflessness of love, and you will give them what they need to be loved or what they need to be romanced. You do that, you'll be fine.
So did your love, you brought up love language, and that's like a big, it has some, it has become so popular, but it's very true. Knowing the person's love language, because a lot of people's like, well, they don't love me. And they didn't, before we all read the book and did the test, we didn't understand that there was something about love language. And if the person doesn't show you, you know, how they love you in the way you would understand love, that's where we get, you don't love
Yeah,
me. So
yeah.
did your love language change after after you got married, or was it the same like all the time? Because I've heard it changes.
Yes, it changes, but I don't think that ours changed as yet. Well, I don't think mine changed. I don't think mine changed as yet. I think it was always quality time. So, but we have been told that it changes, and I can see why it changed because our counselor would have said that, for instance, if we get children, when we get children, then it may be different because it can turn into acts of services. Because if it is that you're so busy and stuff like that, then acts of services can mean something like really good to you, or because I'm so busy. And if he does something in terms of housework, I come home and everything is clean, then it like all of that will more appeal to me because you have children and you're so busy, and then the other person does it. So I can really understand in terms of that why he said that it can change, but I don't think that ours have changed yet. His is still words of affirmation, and mine is still quality time. And yes, it is important, very important, and not only to know, but to know. For instance, as he would have said that when he first heard that mine um love language was quality time, he figured that I needed to be out somewhere all the time or whatever the case may be. But as he said, once he's around, that's quality time for me. So even if we're watching a movie on the laptop or the TV, or just laying down together and not doing anything or not talking to me, all of that is quality time.
Once I'm home,
What?
really good.
So you love when he's home, Shaniqua?
Yeah.
mm, have you ever had a conflict that eventually led to deeper intimacy and understanding? If so, how did that work? Any conflict that came up that actually helped you all to understand each other better?
Yeah, I think most of the conflict that we may have end up, I think, with us seeing, more so on me, because I think every conflict is usually me. But I think when we have disagreements and stuff like that, it really shows you. Well, if you're able to see, or if the other person is able to see that, if you, or for instance, when the last time we had, mm, I think the last time that we had a disagreement, then I was able to then, I may not admit it all the time, but be able to say, oh, you know what, I am that way because of this, and it really had to make me go deeper in self and say, oh, that didn't come from just that thing, but it came from something deeper than that.
Wow.
And then when that happens, we would usually, well, if it's early in the day, I usually like to talk at night because of all. So then when we go to sleep, then I would say, well, babe, okay, understand what you said or whatever. And oh, okay. And the same thing for him, like he would say, well, I now see why that happened or whatever. And he would explain, well, this is where it came from, whatever. It was just not that I was vexed or, whatever the case may be. At that point in time, it was this other thing behind here, and this is where it came from. So yeah.
Nothing to add. Nothing to add.
All right. Another question. Finish this thought. It's not really a question, but finish this thought. I wish that they told me about blank before marriage.
Mm,
You wish you knew before you got married that no one really told you about.
I guess balancing everything. I guess for me, it would be balancing everything. Balancing business, work, relationship, making sure that we still go before God individually and collectively. I think nobody prepared me for that, or nobody ever told me about how hard it would be to balance and bring both of our lives together and connect them together and make sure that nothing is lacking in either area. So for us, we had to step back at some point, especially when he was going to the other day when he was going to go for another job, and then it was like, well, if you go for this job, everything is going to be here. Why? Because in terms of balancing it, I don't think it's going to work out because something will get left behind.
Mm.
And that's not what we want to do, because most times when you go, most times God and your relationship, if you look at marriages and relationships, most of the time God and your relationship suffer because of money, because of work, because obviously you want to go and make a living, and which is good.
Yeah.
You want to go and make a living and bring in money to do whatever you have to do. So if it is that you want to do that, you have to do that, sorry, then that ends up being a priority, and then God and then your relationship and your children, everything else get put on the back burner. So for me, as I said, I think it's balancing our time. And I don't even think that we have mastered it as yet, to be honest. We really haven't, but it's making sure that we spend time together, making sure that a week has not passed and being spending time reading or praying or whatever, and making sure that our businesses, because we both have different businesses, that our businesses is not suffering as well, and we're putting time into everything and making sure that we don't fall short in any area. And it's really, honestly, really hard. It's really hard because I don't know if time is getting shorter or something,
It is.
but I mean, you wake up and then it's like boom, 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 and everything is going so quickly, and it's not enough time in the day to do everything. So it's really hard. I wish that somebody would have told me that, and would have also told me that marriage brings out the ugliness in you.
Wow.
Uh, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, you go ahead. I'll ask after.
Um, as Sean was talking, I was really thinking to myself, that's a really good question. Because you don't want to give a cliche answer, but when I think of what I really wish somebody would have told me for, I think I agree with her. I think balance would have been. I really wish somebody had told me about that. I think selflessness as well. I wish somebody had really broken down to me how selfless you would have to be to really be happily married. Because you can easily go into marriage thinking that you're selfless, but be selfish as ever, and do everything from a very selfish mindset, from a very selfish place of doing what you want to make yourself happy because that's what will make you happy, but not really appreciating that you're not now in marriage for yourself. You don't get married for yourself. You actually come third in the list. You get God, you get your spouse, and then you. So you don't come first in that list anymore. That life of self being pleased and self gratification, all of that goes out the door if you really want to be happily married in a godly way as well. If you want to be happily married in a godly way, that goes out the door. So I wish somebody had told me that how important selflessness was really going to be and how much we were going to be tested on it.
Wow.
And I really wish somebody had told me that Satan really hates marriages and it will do everything in his power to try to break that. And so if you really decide, whether Christian or non-Christian, you decide that you want to be married, um, that union of a marriage is not something that Satan is a fan of. And so you've got to also prepare for the fact that when you step into the ring of marriage, accept that there's an opponent on the other side of the ring who's really trying to give you to knock you out in the first round. And so you've got to be prepared from the jump. As you step in that ring, we are fighting together. We're not fighting apart. We're fighting together against the same enemy. She's not my enemy. We're never fighting against each other. We're always fighting against a greater enemy. And if we don't fight together, then we get defeated individually because our host divided against itself must stand. So I think those are two things. There are probably more if I think long enough. Or those three. Oh well, yeah, whatever. That number. Those are a couple of things that I wish somebody had told me um, before we got married. But balance, what she said about balance, that is so real. And what she said as well about your ugliness, that too, because your spouse is always like I said. If you your spouse is like she sees your blind spots. So you probably don't know they're there, but your spouse is gonna see them, and they're gonna call them out. And if you're not prepared to grow and to be humble enough to admit that these exist and these flaws exist in you, yeah, you're gonna be a real miserable couple.
So I'm always about teaching on this platform. I always want to teach people, whoever's listening in, they're watching. So you're saying that the ugliness comes out like after marriage, and obviously you mean for personality, for those who may want explanation. So before you're married, you may see the person as, wow, you're so wonderful, you're this and that, because you're not really in their space. But you're saying that marriage really forces you, when you spend time with the person, and it brings out like, I guess, the ugly. How soon did you guys have this experience? Like, whoa, I didn't know that was there before. How soon do you think you?
I think, and don't get me wrong, it's not from a place in terms of that you that you put on a front to people.
Yeah.
But as he said, we all have blind spots, and I don't think because you are alone, because you're single, you're not going to see. That's why you usually say that when you before you get into a relationship, you need to work on yourself. But there are some things that you cannot work on until you get into a relationship. That's just the reality of it. And getting into a relationship for me, and especially after marriage, because we're living together, it really showed me then, I guess, how filthy I am, how ugly you are in terms of, as he would have said, selfishness and stuff like that, because it's so easy to live on your own and be single. And to be honest, you really don't have to sacrifice anything. You really don't have to lay down anything. You really don't have to do anything. It's just you alone. So you can be as selfish as you want to. And for me, it didn't seem as if I was selfish.
Wow.
And I thought that I was like selfless, or the queen of selfless, and until marriage, and then to realize how selfish I am, and that he would say, oh well, you're selfish, or you can't do that. You just always want your own way. And because I've been single for so long. So I mean, like stuff like that, it really, that part, that marriage really shows you all of that, who you really are. And as he said, if you choose not to work on it, then you will definitely have a miserable marriage, and it will not be easy, because especially if you have been that way all your life, because me, this is all I knew before, and how I was before, attitudes and all. So if then it's hard to change, but it can change. And if you are willing, then you will change. But if you it's hard to change if you have been that way for 30 however years or whatever it is. But you have to then be willing to change those ugly parts of you that show up through marriage. um, Selfishness, attitudes, well, um
Well, that's
yeah,
common.
aggressive, because I didn't know that I was aggressive. He tells me that all the time. He's like, why do you have to talk like that? Like you don't have to be so aggressive. Like,
Always ready to fight.
like, were you always ready to fight? Were you always ready to defend? So all of those things, even though I guess I don't know if it was putting it on in the rug or whatever, but if you're not in a relationship, you really not not really you're not really gonna see it, I guess. So now being in a relationship, I can now see it because of him telling me, you always get defensive. If somebody tells you something like stuff like that, then he's now able to say this is you. Then I'm now seeing the ugly parts of me that I was not able to see before.
Yeah. I think all I would add to that is I guess if I be biblical for 2 seconds, I suppose I'm a pastor, so what do you expect? But like if you take it all the way back to the Garden of Eden, the original marriage and the way that that was supposed to run, Adam and Eve were together in the garden. The one thing that was constantly there was that they were naked. That's the part that was there. They were naked and unafraid. So naked, now not just meaning how we take naked in terms of blue, but naked meaning nothing was hidden. Everything was open. And then sin enters the earth and God comes down and everything is bad now after as a result of that now because no, they're no longer naked. They're trying to hide themselves and they're no longer willing to be naked. They're no longer willing to just be open and say, well, this is. And since then, that's been man's reality. We spend all of our time now constantly hiding behind fig leaves. Not necessarily meaning that we're doing it from on purpose, like I don't want you to know, but just naturally we're going to hide things. And then marriage is this beautiful act of intimacy, which is intimacy. So now I'm seeing into you and you're seeing into me, and it's going to naturally have to show up the fact that there's no way that you could have been perfect. You ain't that perfect, that you're not God's greatest gift to earth. You were just sinless and perfect with no flaws, no issues. It's impossible. You've just not seen them, and the reality is you can't change what you don't know exists. So you can work on yourself as much as you want, but you can't change things that you don't know exist. And there are some things that she said that you wouldn't realize exist until someone comes close enough to be intimate with you to look into you and say, look, this you need to work on that you can't work like that, you can't say this, you can't do that, you can't act like this. And until that time comes, you're just not going to see. So you could be, and I see that a lot, people, they tell themselves, they're perfect, like they've worked on themselves, they've been to counseling, they've read all the books, they've gone all the personal development, they've done all of that, and they think that they're ready. But in truth and in fact, marriage is going to show you that there's a billion things about you that you don't know nothing about. I remember my spiritual father told me that when I was planning, before I met her, I had said to him, I had made this strong vow to everybody. I was not studying marriage, I wasn't studying relationships, I was just going to work on me. That was it. Gershon is going to work on me. And I remember him telling me, but there's some things that only show up when they're exposed to the fire. And the fire is a relationship or marriage in this case. He says, so go ahead, do all your work on you that you're talking about. But there's some things that you ain't gonna see until you get exposed to the fire. And he didn't tell a lie. He was right.
So basically, what you all are, and even as you're talking, I'm getting it, that we say, and it's a fact that marriage is the greatest example of Jesus Christ and the church. So when we use Jesus Christ, he's the one who shows us ourselves. He's the one who, and wow, it's like actually dawning on, you've heard this so many times, but even talking to you, I'm learning like, wow, that's really what it means. Because when we the relationship with Jesus, whew, and it's a continuous,
Continuous.
so deep. It's continuous because you're married forever and you're always learning something new every day. Your relationship is going to change as you get older or mature, even in Christianity. Thank you both for enlightening those of us who probably it didn't click like that, because we hear a lot of things in Christendom, this, that, oh, it's Christ in the church, but just wow. I'm so wow. Wow. Thank you to the Fords. That's wow.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. God bless.
Okay, and the final question I have, which is so near and dear to me, because I have a lot of women, especially, they come to me and they're over that big 3-0. Okay, so this question is for them, and I would love for both of you to answer. What advice would you give to those who are over 30 who still haven't found the one or been found and honestly feel like God's forgotten about them? Because I'm telling you, there's some women, so I'm asking this question on behalf of them. What are some advice that you would give? The big 3-0. There's something about turning 30.
I guess I would say the most cliche thing ever. and that is wait. And not from the standpoint in terms of that I don't understand, because I do. I got married at 34, so I really do understand that when you hit 30, and I guess you're thinking about like basically I ain't getting younger, I just getting older, the clock ticking, because after a certain age they say that it may not be possible for you to have children anymore, and all of that. That even though you will have feelings, because granted, even all when I was 30, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, before I met him, I would have had the same feelings like, God, like when this can happen, like I'm 34, I'm 32, I'm 33, whatever the case may be, the God is taken away. Like I want to have children because I have all these plans. I want to have children like younger, so that when you get older, you don't have to be dealing with all of that and stuff. But I would say wait, and not wait because God is a punishment from God, because a lot of the times we think that is a punishment or something from God when we are waiting for something, especially when we see everybody else like getting married or in relationships, and especially when you're seeing unsafe people too like getting married in relationships, and you're like, I mean, like I living right, I doing everything I supposed to do, I not having sex, I not doing this, I living fully, I dress in bodies, I doing all of this, and then like an unsafe person come and quote unquote from the love of their life and get him married. Or my friends get him married. Everybody, my family, everybody around me get him married. And not that you're not happy for them, to be honest. Because I remember when my sister got married, and I was extremely happy because outside of my grandmother, when she would have been married for like years before, as I said, I was born, my sister got married. And for me, that was a big thing because nobody in my family after that like was married. So that was a really big thing to break that generational curse and stuff like that, and not being like fornicating and being in relationships stuff like that. And she was not married. So I was like, and after knowing what she would have been through with men and stuff, I was like happy and stuff. But like that part of me was like, God, like when will be my turn? Like I've been waiting forever and doing everything quote unquote, which I think was great, and I still here. And you will have those questions. You will feel that way at times. However, I think the best thing to do is to wait, and that's the best advice I can give you is to just wait it out, and that's the honest truth. Ain't nothing else that I can say other than to wait it out, because we know what happens when we don't wait. Like I've been in that situation already, and it don't end good. It's just like we just waste a bunch of time. Like I can just go and waste 3 years on a relationship that I know that I should have waited, and then I end up in so many different situations that I don't need to end up in, and to just wait, because it's better, the cliche statement says it's better to wait long than marry wrong. And it is so much truth to that, because you don't want to, when you say I do, you committing to somebody under a covenant, under heaven. You literally in a covenant. And in a way to get out of that, unless death, well, other people just do divorce, just for anything, but you making a covenant with someone. And you have to be careful with who you choose to spend the rest of your life to, and who you commit yourself to, and who you go and tie yourself to. Because you're going to tie yourself to a demon, and then what happened? So for me, as I said, it's just encourage all of you to just wait on God. I know it's going to be hard. It's not easy, as I said, especially when you see other things around you and you just want that. Because sometimes, honestly, you just want that companionship. And you just want to feel loved, and you want to give the love that you have on the inside of you to just give. And you just want that. You just want to have children. You just want to, you just want to have sex. You just want to do all these things. You just want to go on a date. You just want to do all of these things. But the reality is if you choose to go outside of the will of God to get something, then you will have to continuously go outside the will of God to maintain. And you really don't want to do that. Because if you are if you go outside of the will of God and you don't exercise discernment, then you end up choosing wrong because of that. And if you maintain that, yes, I will wait on God. I know that I may not be happy all the time. I know I may have the moments where I will feel, you know, a little down and stuff. However, I'm gonna pick myself right back up and keep going because I know, especially I know what God has said to me. I know what God has spoken over my life, and I trust God, and I know that at some point in time, He will bring it to pass. And He will. If He's promised you something, He will bring it to pass. My encouragement, wait and don't marry wrong because you may end up with a demon and
Mm.
a real demon spawn.
Mm.
Well,
Oh.
I don't know I'm supposed to say anything other than pass around the offering basket at this moment. But if I could add anything to what the First Lady has just so eloquently put out there, I would only say the things that God has said to me just now you asked the question. The first thing is that singleness is not a sin. So you're not sinning by being single. God hasn't forgotten you because you are single. You know, the world will not pass you by because you are single. God is not going to put you in hell because you are single. There are actually blessings in being single. And if you were to embrace your singleness, it would actually help you a heck of a lot. So that's the first thing I would say. Your singleness is not a sin. And then secondly, I guess if I can speak from my own personal experience, I'd also say trust and believe that you want to have the right thing at the right time with the right person. And the only way to get that is in God's time. Trust and believe. I'm saying that to also let Adam say that it may seem like it's taking long by your idea and in your mind and by your thoughts and by your process and by your thought and by I don't know all the other things that you find these things by. But there's a man out there that's waiting and hoping that you don't mess it up by running ahead. Translation. God told both of us in 2013 that he was preparing our spouse for us. We never met until 2019 and got married in 2019. That was 6 years. In between that 6 years, real foolishness, we both made all kind of stupid choices trying to find for ourselves what God had already said. And had we at any point in time really made a commitment to the bad choices that we were 2019 would have never been able to happen for us. So
Mm.
even though it may seem like there's a bunch of time that's passing, appreciate that there's a journey and there's a process and there's things that you're learning about yourself that need to happen in that time. God isn't keeping you, quote unquote, keeping you single because he's punishing you. Anything that God allows us to go through, he's also trying to encourage us to grow through it. So focus, I would say, take your focus off of just all of the things that aren't happening and look at some of the things that are happening. Now, I admit, I accept that in saying that, it's easy to say, well, Gershon, you don't understand. I get that. I get that. I understand the emotions. I understand it. I almost got married because all my friends was married and I didn't want to get married too. And I almost signed up myself for a divorce, comfortable. So I understand. I'm not saying this from a place of not understanding. Not with her, of course. Not saying that to anybody. Not saying it therefore from a place where I don't understand. But I'm saying the truth is if God, like Shan said it, if God has said it, it's going to come to pass. And so what you need to be thinking about is what is God saying? If God has not said to you that you're not going to be married, then trust that when God does it, the right time, it will happen and it will work and it will work the way it needs to. There's no biological clock. My God, miracles only exist in our minds because we thought it was outside of God's capability in the first place. If we
Mm.
accepted that the God that we serve was able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we could ask or think or desire, the very things that we think we would automatically know, but God could exceed that. So the only reason why it's a miracle is because you didn't think it was possible in the first place. But
Wow.
health of child at 40, come on, God, come on, come on. There are too many examples in the Bible to prove that God can do whatever. So if you're in alignment and walking with God, then what you may consider a miracle is really going to just be God doing what he already is able to do and what he's promised you anyhow. And so don't allow yourself, or don't allow the devil, or don't allow your friends, or don't allow all the Netflix and the Hallmark and the Lifetime fees to set you up into thinking that, oh my God, oh, it's all gone, it's all over for me now. I'm 35, I'm 36, oh my Lord, and nothing can happen for me now, and it's all going to, no. Everything that God allows is always for a purpose.
Yeah.
Each and every time, anything that God allows is always for a purpose. Hannah's womb was shut up by God for a purpose. She wasn't just barren because because she was barren. There was a purpose. The Bible literally says that the womb was shut by the Lord. But in due season, he opened it. So just know that in due season, that whichever God has promised for you, in due season, if it is what he said, he will open and release it, and you'll be glad when it comes, and you'll be appreciative because you'll know the heck you went, the hell you went through, waiting to get it. And then you'll appreciate it a whole lot more. That's my 2 cents to add to that.
Wow, thank you. So to all of those ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls as well, there's a process that you have to go through, and society makes it seem like, oh well, if after a certain thing this doesn't happen. It's not just about marriage, because you can be married and waiting to have a child. And
Yeah.
that's another pressure, like, oh well, you're almost this age, your child is going to
Yeah.
be when you'll be 38. That's so society is going to always have their definition of when things should happen. But as we look through, even uh through this interview and just speaking to people in general, everyone's story is different, everyone's journey is different. I know, personally, if I got married at the age I thought I wanted to get married, I would have been part of the, divorce statistic, because at that
Yeah.
time I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, even as they would have pointed out in this interview, that we think we're ready. She, they talked about, Shaniqua said she thought she was selfless, and after she got married, she learned that she isn't. So some people may need a little more training, because when you have two coming together from different background, different experiences, if you're
Yeah.
not trained, you don't have a solid foundation in Jesus, God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit. If you don't have that solid foundation, when things happen, you're going to want to call a lawyer. Please get me out of this, because you weren't ready.
Yeah.
So they're encouraging all of you, all those who are single, to wait. I know it sounds cliche, but it's better to wait for the right person, because even when you marry the right person, there are still challenges. So can you
Yeah.
imagine you marry the wrong person?
Yeah.
Because
Cool.
to be married, everyone else is married, everybody, all of your friends are married, all of your friends, I have friends who, or like my graduating class, their children are like 10. You're like, oh well, I'm still waiting to have a child. There's so many, we compare ourselves to
Yeah.
everyone, but at the end of the day, every one of we all have a different journey, and we need to be thankful to the preparation. So for you, you may say, oh, well, I'm ready to get married, not knowing maybe the person you may connect with may not want to travel as much as you. So you have to think about, am I, not to give up, but there are some people who love to travel, and God wants you to be married to someone who loves to travel as well. But the person you're with, they say, well, I want to stay right here, I don't want to go anywhere. And then you tie yourself up with someone who God did not have for you. So the wait is indeed worth it. Shaniqua is telling you, Gershon is telling you that the wait is worth it. If they did with whoever they wanted to do it with and did not wait on God, they would not be sitting here having this discussion and sharing their experience with us. So I just want to thank you both for sharing your experience, encouraging all of us who are watching. And my name is Thea Star, aka Empress T of Empress Royal Publishing, where everything tells a story. So thank you for tuning in. Bye.